So that was off of all the sort of viral stuff I did that ended up going like Telegraph and The Guardian. And I basically went from, it must have been about 11,000 followers to 13,000 in less than a month.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Owner, where we're all about making an impact through entrepreneurship. Today, I'm here with Rory. So welcome, Rory.
Hi, thanks.
You're good. So if we just give it a start, Rory, if you just tell us a bit about yourself or where you're from.
Okay, so I'm based up in Lancaster, in Lancashire, originally from Bristol, and I kind of moved up here to be closer to the hills. I do a lot of hill running and outdoor sports. I kind of work in the influencer scene, I guess, in the outdoor world, as well as putting on events for the creative and digital industry in Lancashire for UCLan, the university up here. And I kind of heard that it was near some good hills, and at the time I was doing a lot of climbing and sort of hill walking, so that kind of fitted in perfectly with how I kind of foresaw kind of the lifestyle I'd have. For some reason, I pictured myself like running on Sunset Hills after work. And I thought, wow, that would be like an amazing life. Imagine if I could do that. And obviously that is actually now my lifestyle. So that's kind of worked out pretty much exactly how I pictured it when I heard there was kind of work up this way.
So what was your upbringing like? So were your family into outdoorsy stuff and that kind of thing when you were younger?
Yeah, so I guess my grandfather was like a skier in the mountains. He did a lot of alpine skiing. So my dad then did a lot of alpine skiing and alpine mountaineering. My mum has always done a lot of cardio-based sport. So with my parents, with my mum, sort of distance running, and my dad, mountaineering, climbing, hiking. They took me to the Alps from when I was a tiny child, pretty much at least once a year, every year, to either ski or hike. And then also I did a lot of sailing as well and kind of water sports growing up. So yeah, until probably the age of about 21, I probably didn't, from maybe, 8 or 9, I didn't miss a season year, miss a year or a season out for a holiday in some sort of alpine or water-based kind of sport holiday. So I've done a lot of sport growing up, and that was predominantly through holidays. I wouldn't say I did a huge amount of that sort of thing growing up, but then as soon as I was kind of age to cycle around by myself, I did a lot of mountain biking, just with friends, road cycling, a lot of cycling up until uni when I joined the mountaineering club. And that's where I kind of got into climbing, and it kind of re-sparked a lot of my sort of, I guess, knowledge and passion for the hills. And and then graduating, I moved up to be closer to the hills up here in Lancashire.
Okay, so what did you do at university?
So I studied product design with human factors, and actually after graduating, I did move up here to be a product designer. I designed for probably about just over 5 years, and then kind of moved into putting on events for the creative sort of sector. And that was partly because there was always a little bit about design I didn't like. And after about 5 years, I think that grinded on me enough that I just kind of wanted to do things like events and kind of be out and about much more. Being sat at a desk isn't what I'm made for. I know I'm not made for sitting down. Like, I feel like a lot better when I'm out doing sports and moving. So being out and about, which is normally what events is until we're in a pandemic and I work from home. But it's a lot more active and moving and meeting new people, and I enjoy that quite a bit.
Okay, so I know that you're a brand ambassador for a number of brands and that kind of thing. So how did this all come about that you obviously started doing this work in the outdoors?
Yeah, so that all came about through Instagram. It started off with a photo competition that I won after coming back from a trip in the Alps climbing. And I met with this brand that were going to give me like a hat or a buff or some sort of like neck gaiter and something really low value for this photo competition. And I kind of talked them into giving me a jacket in exchange for a bit more promotion on my Instagram. And I like that lifestyle of kind of getting nice things. And all I had to do was kind of talk about it on my Instagram. Being a designer, I kind of have I'd like to say like a fairly good insight into products and their benefits and how they're made. And I've always kind of tried to push products in terms of the function elements in what I do in the running and the climbing. So I saw it as kind of a natural progression to move into promoting products and testing products out. So I actively tried to grow my Instagram, and I feel like I was quite lucky. Instagram wasn't at its kind of maturity that it's at now. The community, the outdoor community, was still kind of growing, and I tried to find myself a good little niche and a good little position within there. And I've always kind of maintained that position where people come to me for advice on kit. They know I kind of pushed the limits of this kit somewhat. And I've just kind of gained more following, worked with more premium brands, and then kind of built myself up into that role that I kind of have now in terms of offering a lot of advice around footwear, really.
Okay, good. Because obviously you've got a large following. You're an influencer on Instagram, online, and so obviously in the early days, so you do this thing that you did initially to obviously get the product that you got, but then how did you then move on to start to really build an audience? So what are some practical things you actually did?
Yeah, so I realized that I guess it's much like networking in the outside world, which when you're not looking at your phone at the time, you need that community, you need to understand that community, you need to add value to that community. So interacting with the other people that seem to be quite on it in terms of the Instagram, in terms of having bigger followings than myself, interacting with them, talking to them, and also showing that you have some value. So sharing their content, promoting their content, they're likely then to promote your content, and that kind of full circle allows you to then grow as they grow. And also, yeah, like I said, about adding value, like if you're showing places that other people can go to, kit that people would benefit from, it would solve some of people's problems, yeah, you are more sort of desirable to maybe follow. And yeah, I guess that massive role of being in the community, helping other people out and them helping you out, is like the best way to organically grow that I find in the niche that I'm in.
Okay. What about in, like, obviously times like this? Let's say we're in this coronavirus pandemic, and a lot of businesses are now starting to say, "Oh, wait a minute! I need to get on this social media thing because obviously I can't. Everything's a bit more restricted." And now a lot of people are saying organic reach is pretty much dead on on Instagram and that kind of thing. What advice would you give to those people who are just starting now?
You need to have some niche, you need to be focused. And there's so many accounts doing loads of things and having a really wide reach and not really focusing on certain aspects. And I think I always try and be as niche as I can. I know that's probably ironic when I do a lot of sports, but the style in which I do a lot of things is thought through. Like a lot of the campaigns or a lot of the work I do, there's a lot of consideration behind them. And I think because of that, like it has a bit more traction. Like rather than just posting a picture because you feel like you need to get it up, like it plays dividends to kind of have a notion behind why you're posting that and how you're maybe going to run with that. So like in lockdown, I realized that it was a good opportunity to actually grow. I think it was either that opportunity where you either kind of hide and hope it all blows over and realize that it won't, or sort of dig your teeth into it and kind of push harder. So I did a number of sort of campaigns and pushes around relevant things. I think being really relevant, like being really agile and being able to jump on trends and jump on things like as they're happening, if not just slightly before, is great. Brands can always be a bit slow to things because they don't work on weekends and they have lots of sign off. Whereas as like an influencer, you can kind of just do it. So I saw that being in kind of isolation and not going out was going to be a big thing. It was going to be affecting a lot of people in terms of mental health, knowing what to do, boredom. A lot of people don't stay inside all the time. So I use that to kind of work on a few campaigns with a few different brands and kind of sort of leapfrog that. And then get it so it was so novel that it got picked up by BBC, CNN, and a lot of like international TV producers, papers, The Guardian, The Telegraph, all of those things. But it was about being relevant, being novel, and engaging the community into something. I think if you do something by yourself, that's great. But if you get a number of other people, 30 other people get involved in a project you're in, you're now spreading that to all of those 30 people's contacts. And if they're not necessarily in the same sort of groups you are, you're then just getting a much wider reach. And I think organically, you can't pay for that, and I think it's not always about the massive following accounts. They're great. But if I'm working on something where I feel like it would be good to share with a wide range of people, accounts that have a couple of hundred followers do some good dividends, because they have often like a much more engaged following if they're still posting regularly, and a couple of hundred followers, that will get you a good amount of shares off of that and a good amount of interaction. So not being picky or sort of turning your nose up to those sort of people that don't have massive accounts. Maybe you probably don't want to work with them and pay for them to do all of your work, but having influencers that know the key ones that will push that message out to them for them to then push that message out, I think works really well.
Okay, good. So have you ever paid for any form of social media, following or like influencers or anything like that?
No, so I've never paid for any followers or any paid ads or to push my profile. I just think that I'd rather stay fully organic and like fully natural, and just know that everyone is following me and interacting with me because of the work I produce, because of the content I do and the engagement I have. I don't want to have paid for that. I just feel like that's not, for me personally, that's not why I'm doing it. Like, I have an overall arching kind of message and desire with what I do. And if anything doesn't fit within that, I just won't do it. And that is to actively encourage people to get out more, do more outdoor sport. And I think paying for someone to see that kind of goes against that, when all the outdoor sport I promote is, free to do. You might need kit for sure. You probably want some good kit for a lot of it, but we can all go out to the river and swim. We can all go out to the hills and run and ride our bikes on the roads. I'd much rather stay fully organic and rely on it.
Because what advice would you then give to other businesses? Because what you do is quite easy to like take pictures and videos, because you do a lot of very active things. What about businesses who then say, well, what I do is not that exciting, and I can't really take pictures of it, so how am I going to grow my my social media? What advice would you give them?
I think for a start, always good quality images is a massive thing. If your subject isn't that interesting anyway, taking it on a bad camera phone is going to do you no benefit. I shoot most of the stuff I do on my phone. It's a Google Pixel 4, so it has as good camera as you can get on a smartphone right now. If I work with other photographers, then it will be on a much better camera. But I don't use a fancy camera. Sometimes I guess I use my GoPro for the water-based stuff where I won't want to take my phone into the water. But it's a lot of it's achievable on what the devices that we all kind of mostly have. It's just about making sure that shot is on point, taking it into something like Adobe Lightroom and editing it just to lift that up a level. That helps. I always think like with when you're trying to like get more followers or get more engagement, you've kind of got that. People will look at your profile, and if it doesn't immediately sort of pop out as something that they want to follow, then they're going to leave. I could send so much traffic to someone's account, but if it doesn't look like what they're expecting and of a certain quality that they'll follow, then they're not going to follow it. So I think, having your grid on point, so where it doesn't look untidy, it looks really clean and really succinct, having good quality images, I like the base level, and a bio that explains what you do, maybe some highlights that people can quickly look at and see what you're about, but that should be base level. Past that, it's about having that interaction with the community, making sure that you do know what's going on out there, and I guess to some point making whatever you do look exciting. Because if it is a boring subject, then if you're at least passionate about what may look like a boring subject, it can be interesting. And if you've got that energy, it will carry things a lot further, I think. If you are just doing it with no love, that's going to show. So yeah, and if you do it with love, you're going to probably know someone else on Instagram that's also into it, that, you know, will like on your photos and ask you interesting questions, and that you can ask interesting questions back. And there might even be some people that do some interesting stuff that you might share. So I think those sort of things are quite important, because you could probably say, and some people might think, that a pair of shoes are boring, but you can then do lots of things because of that. You can shoot it in a certain way, you can talk about it in a more in-depth way, or in a more enabling way, just like you could apply that to anything, any object, or any service.
Okay, so no, that's actually really, really, really insightful. And you mentioned a lot about coming together almost with other people, and approaching other people and that kind of thing. So how do you go about this? So like, you're on social media, what's the right way, so to say, of approaching people, so that, you know, to be able to increase your network and that kind of thing?
I think organically being interested in whatever they are doing, and having conversations, DMs, you know, direct message people that you think, wow, that looks cool, I want to do that. Ask questions, get to know them, give them their sort of piece to speak about what they're interested, and genuinely have like a kind of friendship online. And then you need to be sharing their content and interacting with their content before you could ever ask for them, I think. Or, you know, you need to have that sort of relationship, even if it's online and you've never met, where you can ask them, you know, could you share this? Or to a point where they want to share, because you've already been sharing their stuff, and it's kind of, you know, they want to help you out. I think that's really important, and that does take time, there's no doubt. But knowing like who is worth kind of having those conversations and building those relationships is probably like a good way of doing that. So like focusing, you know, I think if you're an influencer, you probably know not a lot of the other influencers that are doing similar work to you. And that's not through chance. That's because, you know, you kind of want to know what they're doing and be helping them so that they can help you. Or at least I think, you know, good influencer work will do that. So yeah, I mean, because you'll probably be doing a campaign similar to them at some point where you will have to work together. So yeah, I guess, and like I said about the smaller accounts actually as well, like you don't just want to be interacting with only influencers, because, you know, they're never going to buy anything from you because they're already probably getting it for free and paid to promote it. Having, you know, knowledge and awareness around who is really excited about things and might have a small following, but is doing a lot of content and is a lot of engagement, that's super important too. And it's not about like using these people, like I'm not trying to be that guy that's like all about numbers, but, you know, like it's required in some way. Like if you're gonna promote things, then you can't just be pushing out, you need to also be putting in the time to engage with everyone, and genuinely have like friendships with people like that. That's fine, like that is what you're kind of doing, and it's just, you know, a bit of friendly advice that is maybe part of a campaign.
Yeah, okay. What's your process, if any, that you take for creating content?
I think I always try and think of something that's relatable, even if the actual outcome of what I do, a lot of people wouldn't try that or do that. There's aspects of it that you could take away and it would be accessible enough for most people. That's kind of my target market. Because I think it's important that people understand, if you say you're going to do some really complex challenge that only sort of a really small percentage of people will grasp how hard or even what you're doing is, that's not really going to satisfy your target market. I always think that there's a lot of things, like when you say, you know, you're going to run the length of the country, people understand that. They've seen a map. You know, you can't go through your entire life without realizing that the country is quite long, it's quite far. So when you say something like that, like a challenge like that, people grasp it and they think, well, you know, I've done couch to 5K one time, I ran 5K, so if he's running all of that, maybe I could run a bit further. Or they're thinking, well, I ran 5K once, imagine running, you know, 5,000K. It's kind of having that relatable aspect. And then emotive is like, I try to be as emotive as I can in all my content. So either that being that someone thinks, oh, I would so love to be in that person's shoes. I'd love to be running those trails. I'd love to be doing those swims, or just like a particular sort of heartfelt piece of copy or content where they're like, I feel that, I know someone who's been through that. Something that, yeah, conjures up some level of emotion that's relatable, and that is somewhat also inspiring. I know that's like a weird thing to throw into the mix, you know, when you're trying to be accessible and relatable. But also, you know, if I was doing the exact same thing as everyone else that wasn't an influencer, then I probably wouldn't be really sort of encouraging people to do other things. So like, that's what I mean about doing something that's people can relate to, but then they're like, wow, that's still amazing. Like, it'd be so great to do that. Or to be going to places and, you know, doing routes that people will then want to go and do themselves, and that kind of level of inspiration. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, my three things I'm often thinking when I'm kind of concepting up or, yeah, just producing content.
Amazing. And so tell us a bit about some successes that you've had, maybe some brands that you're very proud to have worked with and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, well, I love the work that I do with Speedo. I think they produce great products, and it's a brand that pretty much everyone knows. I've spent a lot of time telling people that I do bits of work for brands and mentioning brands that no one's ever heard of. If they're not in the outdoor world, not everyone's heard of Salomon, which is a brand I grew up on, you know, spending my youth like going out to the hills. My dad had a pair of Salomon walking boots, and I remember that was like a big brand. And I think I've had Salomon products throughout my sort of childhood. I knew that was like a premium brand. So when I started working with Salomon, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I told people, and they were like, who are Salomon? And unless you may be a runner or a hill walker, you won't know Salomon.
Yeah.
Speedo is one of those brands that everyone's kind of heard of, especially when people joke about Speedos. Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's pretty cool doing some work with Nike Swim recently, but I still think, as much as everyone's heard of Nike, and that's a great piece of work to be on board with. But yeah, I think I'm probably most proud about the stuff I do at Speedo, because it enables me to do the kind of the projects that I've been doing. And so this kind of the Speedo stuff was interlinked with the Deep Waters project, which I completed at the end of winter, which was to swim the length of all the deepest tarns, all the sort of high bodies of water up in the Lake District that are deeper than 10 meters. So I swam those in the coldest months. And so, yeah, to work with a brand like that, to produce content throughout, producing some Speedo stuff, and which, you know, I guess there's probably other people that have swam the length of these tarns, but I don't know of anyone that's kind of done it in that condensed time with that style of movement. So everything was, I ran up or hiked up in some pretty terrible conditions, frankly, and then would swim across these tarns at night a lot. 75% of the time was at night, because I did a lot after work, and they would be like covered in snow. You just like pushing the snow out the way as you swim, or you know, the water was like 2-3 degrees. Stuff like that is kind of out there. There's not a huge amount of people that are doing that sort of committing swims solo, at least anyway.
So would you say that's why, you know, you're able to work with some of these bigger brands, the fact that you're willing to do things that most other people are not willing to do, really?
For sure. I don't have the biggest following in the world, and a lot of the people that do work with Speedo have bigger followings than me, or are competing at a level that I'm nowhere near. But by focusing on being niche, by doing stuff that's very different, that no one else is doing, or not many other people are doing it in a way that I think is, you know, the best way to promote it, I think it enables me to work with a lot more brands and have opportunities that other people with my size following don't have. And I think that's down to the creativity and also that sort of position within the community, the niche community that is the outdoors.
Okay, and this is a question that I ask a lot of people, and which obviously I always talk about. Obviously, we're all about making an impact in entrepreneurship. And what impact would you say you're trying to make?
I think it's about realizing that you can do more outdoor sport than you think, or you can do more with your kind of physical ability. Not necessarily saying that everyone should run marathons and ultras and swim ultra distance or anything like that, but much more around people realizing that actually they can go up and hike and that they could do it a bit regularly if they wanted, and that there's so much around where we all live where you can do that. I lived in London whilst I was at university, and I still managed to get out and do some wild camps and hike some long trails. So wherever you are, there is probably a hill not too far away from you, or a body of water that's okay to swim in. So I think, yeah, that's kind of my impact, is to make people who maybe aren't doing a huge amount of sport try a bit, and those that are doing sport at the moment try to push themselves a bit harder. And that doesn't necessarily mean racing. I don't promote racing at all. I don't race, but I think there's a lot to having a project, or accomplishing some goals, and that's kind of what I guess I want my impact to be, for people to kind of better themselves and realize that they're better than they are.
Okay, that's really good. And just kind of going back a bit to social media, because obviously I believe that the information that you've already given and more will really help people, especially in the economic climate that we're in. So what's the biggest jump that you ever saw in social media? Because I know at the moment you've got over 13,000.
So that was off of all the sort of viral stuff I did that ended up going Telegraph and The Guardian. And I basically went from, it must have been about 11,000 followers to 13,000 in less than a month. And that was down to, basically, whilst we're in lockdown, I did a number of challenges, a few different challenges that made the news. The first ones were doing the UK 3 peaks sort of heights on my back stairs and in my back garden. So I ran the height of Scarfell Pike running up the back hill. So I ran up and down the hill a lot. That was a lot of, it ended up being sort of half marathon distance of just running up and down my back hill. Then I realized not everyone had a back hill. So I went onto my steps because it was, lockdown, and I ran up and down the 7 set of steps from my kitchen to my back garden, some 4,000 times, or 3,000 times, to do the height of Snowdon. Snowdon, and then Ben Nevis, sorry. And then I did the height of Snowdon on just one step, because I realized not everyone had steps. So I took the height of my bottom step, which is the same height as an average curb outside a house. So I wanted to make it accessible, and I ran up and down that 7,000 something times. That took 3-4 hours. It took a very long time. I had to wake up very early before work, because I was doing all these things before work, before sort of sitting down at the desk at 9. So that was an early start. That kind of, that made it into the news, because not many people kind of doing that sort of thing and showing how accessible it was to kind of still do some sort of elevation. And then the Everest Base Camp journey, where I brought 30 people with me, all virtually, to do the effective height of a journey going up to Everest Base Camp on your steps. And we kind of documented all of that, and all 30 of us kind of made it all the way in terms of elevation for each of the days over some 5 or so days. And that made it into the news internationally, just because I guess it was more of a narrative around us all doing it. That was because I wanted people to stay home. I wanted people to continue to exercise but not be going out, because we're in lockdown. And also I wanted people to have some purpose. I knew that when we all lost our sports clubs, our social activities, people were going to be struggling, and I noticed some of my friends were struggling in the community. So I brought a few friends in I could see that probably weren't having the best time, gave them some purpose, gave me some purpose, because I had a group to organize, and we did some real good in terms of physical health, mental health, and also kind of pushing out that there was this thing you could do, and it was running up and down your steps that had some narrative, because we chose a certain hill that we were going to do or whatever. And a lot of people then did that themselves, and they actually proved to themselves that they could do far more reps up and down their stairs than they realized. It was amazing. You kind of say, do a couple of 100-meter peak, and people would be like, wow, that's really high, like a 900-meter peak. But you get them to run that elevation or walk that elevation on their stairs a few times, and they realize that actually they're fit enough to do that. So it was a very positive thing, and for me it meant I increased my following by sort of 2,500 followers in a month.
Amazing. And I always ask people this question, but what does success mean to you?
I I quite like the modest idea that it means that I am able just to run and be fit and get out on the hills all the time as much as I want to.
Mm.
So, if I can do as much exercise every day and still work, I'm happy with that. That sounds like pretty good success for me. If I can have some of my trips funded, so I don't have to pay for them, I don't have to worry about financing those sort of things, and go off and do some really cool trips, then that sounds like success for me. So it
Mm.
doesn't necessarily mean money. I think it's enabling my passion is more what success is for
Mm.
me.
Amazing, amazing. And so finally, what can people do to basically support you in the impact you're trying to make?
So follow me on Instagram at Rory Southworth, and follow the projects that I work on, and hopefully do some good with things like Kit Collective UK, which is just under at Kit Collective UK. And then, yeah, engage in any of my content and the content we create at Kit Collective. If people DM me with any questions, I always get back to all my DMs. I'm all about that. Yeah, so any questions around anything that I can help with, and if you've got something that you feel passionate about that you want me to share, yeah, I'll share it, because like I said, I will share a lot of things because that's how other people will share your content. And if you're producing good stuff and you have good notions and good reasons, then I think we should promote these sort of voices. A lot of the work that we're doing with Kit Collective, which is a project that's specifically helping groups and access to outdoors for Black, Asian, minority ethnicities, is all about promoting voices. It's a lot around supplying premium quality kit to boost the experience that people have on the hills, but it's a lot about promoting voices, and I think that's super important. Whether the voice is, if it's something that is worth hearing and has a good notion behind, and if they don't have a huge amount of followers, then I'm definitely happy to kind of use any following, any connections I have to promote those voices. I think it's important that if someone's got a good point, that we all hear it.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. No, thank you very much for that. Well, thank you so much for your time, Rory. And yeah, I'm gonna hopefully we could do something again sometime soon. So yeah, there you have it, guys. That's Rory. So please do remember to follow him, Instagram, and all the other places he's at. All the details will be in the description below, and also please do remember to subscribe if you like this content.